War can have a profound and often devastating impact on men's mental health, affecting nearly every aspect of psychological and neurological function. Exposure to the brutality, unpredictability, and life-threatening nature of combat can lead to both short-term and long-term changes in the brain and behavior. Today we take a detailed look of how war affects men's mental health and the associated neurological effects. Let's get into it. Psychological effects of war on men. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Definition: PTSD is a mental health condition triggered by experiencing or witnessing traumatic events, common among soldiers exposed to combat. Symptoms: intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, and nightmares. Avoidance of reminders associated with trauma. Emotional numbness and detachment. Hyperarousal, e.g., being easily startled, constantly on edge. Prevalence: studies show that between 10–30% of combat veterans develop PTSD, depending on the intensity and duration of combat exposure. Depression. Symptoms: persistent sadness, hopelessness, and loss of interest. Fatigue, changes in appetite, and sleep disturbances. Suicidal ideation or attempts. Causes: separation from family, moral injury, violating one's ethical code in war, loss of comrades, and witnessing mass suffering all contribute. Anxiety disorders. Forms: generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, panic disorder, and social anxiety. Combat link: constant exposure to danger and unpredictability primes the brain for chronic fear responses even after returning to civilian life. Substance use disorders. Prevalence: many veterans turn to alcohol or drugs to cope with symptoms of PTSD or depression. Consequences: substance abuse worsens mental health, increases the risk of suicide, and often leads to homelessness or incarceration. Anger and aggression. Manifestations: irritability, violent outbursts, difficulty with emotional regulation. Neurological basis: the amygdala, fear and aggression center, may become hyperactive, while the prefrontal cortex, which regulates impulses, becomes less effective due to chronic stress. Neurological and cognitive effects of war. Structural changes in the brain. War-related trauma can physically alter brain structures. Hippocampus. Function, memory and emotion regulation. Effect: reduced volume in PTSD sufferers, impairs memory and increases vulnerability to stress. Amygdala. Function: processes fear and threat. Effect: becomes hyperactive in PTSD, leading to exaggerated fear responses and emotional dysregulation. Prefrontal cortex. Function: decision-making, reasoning, impulse control. Effect: underperforms due to trauma, contributing to poor judgment, aggression, and emotional instability. Corpus callosum. Function: connects left and right hemispheres, aids in emotional and cognitive integration. Effect: may show decreased activity, impairing communication between emotional and rational parts of the brain. Neurochemical changes. Chronic stress from war leads to neurochemical imbalances. Cortisol, stress hormone. Elevated levels damage neurons, particularly in the hippocampus. Norepinephrine and adrenaline. Overproduced during and after trauma, keeping the brain in a state of hyper-alertness. Serotonin and dopamine. Reduced levels can cause depression, lack of pleasure, and mood instability. Behavioral and social effects. Emotional numbing and detachment. Soldiers may become emotionally distant or disconnected from others, including family, as a defense mechanism against pain. This impairs relationships and can lead to social isolation. Identity crisis and moral injury. Definition: psychological distress from betraying one's moral beliefs in war, e.g., killing civilians, failing to protect comrades. Effect: deep guilt, shame, and loss of self-worth. Difficulties with reintegration. Returning to civilian life often feels meaningless or alienating after intense wartime experiences. Veterans may feel misunderstood, undervalued, or chronically out of place. Long-term mental health outcomes. Chronic PTSD and complex trauma. Without treatment, PTSD can last for decades and worsen over time. Complex trauma develops from repeated exposure to trauma and includes dissociation, emotional instability, and personality changes. Increased suicide risk. Male veterans, especially those with PTSD or depression, are significantly more likely to die by suicide than civilians. Risk factors include chronic pain, isolation, substance abuse, and lack of adequate support. Neurodegenerative risk. Some studies suggest that prolonged exposure to trauma may increase risk for Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia due to cumulative neural damage. Treatment and recovery. Although war deeply scars mental health, treatment and support can lead to healing. Psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, and exposure therapy. Medication, antidepressants, anxiolytics, and mood stabilizers. Group therapy and peer support, connecting with others who share similar experiences. Holistic approaches, meditation, exercise, service animals, and art therapy can be powerful adjuncts to clinical treatment. Early intervention. The sooner trauma is addressed, the better the outcomes. Conclusion. War affects men's mental health by deeply altering the brain's structure and function, often resulting in PTSD, depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and difficulty reintegrating into society. These changes are not only psychological, but also neurobiological, manifesting in chronic stress responses and long-term damage to emotional regulation systems. Recognizing these effects and providing comprehensive care and support is essential to helping veterans recover and lead fulfilling lives. There are links in the description that can help you find the support you need.